Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Just wanted to quickly discuss the new gems in Ultimatum, now that we have their stats at gem level 20 and at quality 20. That's not a guarantee that they will perform the same way at 21 or higher gem level, but 20 is a good starting point because it's the highest you can get without significant investment in your character, and most gems do just tend to get 4 or 5% better for each level beyond that. So firstly, we have Corrupting Fever. This doesn't look like it's dealing a lot of physical damage per second. It looks like it costs a lot of life. This gem is so easy to underestimate. Sorry, don't underestimate it. It's really good. So it costs 520 life to cast. That's a lot. That increases even more if you link it to things like increased duration or empower support. But this is a cost you pay once when you enter a map. You don't need to think about it after that. Then it has a base duration of 6 seconds. During that 6-second period, all you need to do to reset this duration is to use another skill that costs at least 205 life, or use a combination of skills that total 205 life cost. That doesn't work on every build, but it will work on a lot of them. The fact that it's dealing 335.4 base physical damage per second from Corrupting Blood, that's really going to add up. And I think it's so easy to underestimate this skill. I think that any build that is regularly spending life to cast its own spells, whether through life tap support or through one of the newly added skills that natively cost life, you want to use Corrupting Fever. Lastly, do not link this to cast when damage taken. The last line on it ensures that you will have a bad day if you do. Triggering this skill still requires paying its cost. So this means that if you link Corrupting Fever to cast when damage taken, an enemy hits you, boom, 520 life gone, as well as whatever damage the enemy did. So yeah, don't do that. Exsanguinate's next. Exsanguinate looks better than a lot of us thought it would be. The damage on this is pretty high. Mechanically, I think Exsanguinate looks to be a mediocre skill. It's a tight cone in front of you, probably more similar to the skill Glacial Cascade in its ability to project damage than anything else that I can think of. However, it applies a decent amount of physical damage, and then it does a base physical damage per second of 1,121.1. This can stack up to 3 times. If you manage to sustain 3 stacks on an enemy, you're looking at 3,363 base damage per second. That's a lot. That can be scaled further with all sorts of mechanics, so it's looking really good. The problem with Exsanguinate is that it looks like it will clear badly unless you dedicate an entire support gem to granting the skill Chaining. There are other ways you can grant it Chaining. You can dedicate your Ascendancy to the project by going a Deadeye. Deadeye has a universal skills chain +1 times, or you can wear the unique amulet Gloomfang, which can be a bit tricky to use because it causes you to lose life when you hit enemies, but it will grant you an additional chain. There are so many things that grant conditional chains in Path of Exile at the moment. All of the bow-related effects that grant things like the Shaper bows that have +1 chain on them are being changed to only be +1 to the number of times attack projectiles chain. So they're all crangled completely for you. And a lot of other gems that you might use, like a snake pit. Sorry, not gems, pieces of equipment like a snake pit. They don't work either because they are limited only to projectiles from spells chaining. You need something that will work on Arc, and really that is just chain support, Awaken chain support, Gloomfang, or the Deadeye Ascendancy. All in all, I think that probably all of those are, those are probably all too high of a cost. And I'm not sure that I think Exsanguinate is looking like a great skill for clearing maps with. But for killing bosses, it looks really, really good. Definitely open to being proven wrong, though, and if people can make a fast clearing build with Exsanguinate, I'll be happy to eat my words. Petrified Blood. Petrified Blood scales worse than I think a lot of us thought it might. So the way that Petrified Blood scales with increased gem level is that instead of taking 100% of the life loss as damage over time, you instead take only 76% of the life loss that's prevented. However, Petrified Blood is going to make you weaker against one-shots at all gem levels. And as a result of this, I don't think Petrified Blood is going to be a particularly strong defensive mechanic for most builds. I think there will be some niche uses for it, but essentially Petrified Blood has a high cost to, it provides a high cost for you to remain on low life. I think Chevron's Wrappings and and stacking Energy Shield is a lower opportunity cost, and so I think that overall you would prefer to go with the Chevron's Wrappings route for any low life build. That's my gut thoughts. Open to being proven wrong there. Reap next. So I checked out the numbers on Reap versus Soul Rend. Reap and Soul Rend are pretty similar skills in some ways. Reap's base damage first looks to be quite a bit lower, but then you think there's this blood charge mechanic, and you can get 75% more damage when you've got maximum blood charges. When you've got maximum blood charges, Reap is dealing a considerable initial hit, whereas Soul Rend only does an initial tickle, and then the damage per second is pretty high. So Reap is going to be far superior to Soul Rend for general clearing, just because it has much better damage projection, and it's going to be superior on bossing, as long as you can dedicate quite a bit of time to standing still and getting all of your blood charges up. I think all in all that Reap is looking like a solid skill. These numbers do not lead me away from using the skill. I'm going to probably league start it, and I will be putting together my thoughts on how to build an Elementalist around it, using all of the Golem stacking as a way of scaling damage into the stratosphere with it. So that's my gut thoughts there. There'll be other ways that people build around Reap as well. I think there'll be people who run it as a gladiator with all of the physical damage over time multiplier stuff that's available down there, play super tanky, and I think there'll be other options as well. So I'd urge you just to have a look around, but if you are interested in copying the Elementalist approach, which will be purely physical damage, despite the apparent weirdness of that on an Elementalist, then definitely check back on this channel, and I will be just putting that together probably in the next 14 hours or so. Life Tap support. So Life Tap support is the new Blood Magic. It's a big upgrade on Blood Magic, but this is the version of Blood Magic that applies to your. This is the version of Blood Magic that applies specifically to skills that don't reserve mana. And this looks like a pretty solid option. Supported skills cost life instead of mana. They deal 10% increased and 29% more damage, but the 29% more damage is conditional upon you spending 205 life per 4 seconds on the skills. I think 205 is a low amount of life to spend, and so Life Tap is going to be something that you can use quite aggressively on a lot of builds. As well, Life Tap can still be linked to your favorite movement skill, and that will work just as well as it ordinarily would. Note that the cost and reservation, the cost multiplier is 200%. So that means that if you are linking Flame Dash, and Flame Dash costs 44 mana, then it's going to cost you 88 life to cast it with Life Tap support at level 20. Cruelty support is next. This looks really good for Exsanguinate and really good for Reap. So this is the support gem that buffs both the hit and the damage over time component of skills. Inflicts a 4-second debuff on enemies that cause them to take increased damage from the damage over time component of skills, but the intensity of that debuff is dependent upon how hard you hit the enemy. I think that there will definitely be a setup that uses Cruelty with Reap and scales both the damage over time and the initial hit component, and in fact, that's the way I'm intending to go. Bloodthirst support is really, really flying under the radar at the moment still. This just keeps looking better every time we see it, so it deals 19% more attack damage as well. The way that you'll use this is on a character that has a high life pool and is low life, and is using one of the various unique weapons that gets a huge percentage of physical damage converted into elemental damage. So I'm thinking of Voidforge, and I'm thinking of Doomfletch Prism here. That's going to grant you a tremendous amount of extra damage. If you're playing a build that has, say, 8,000 life and is using Petrified Blood, now this is a build where you will use Petrified Blood, then you're going to be dealing 160 extra base physical damage when you're on low life, and you're getting 19% more damage. That 160 base physical damage is then converted to something like 480 flat elemental damage with those specific items. That's a lot to get from one support gem that is still a 19% more multiplier. So yeah, Bloodthirst support really, really, really strong in that narrow niche. For general purpose use, I think give it a miss. Arrogant support is the aura version of Blood Magic, and yeah, it's better than what exists at the moment. I can't remember what the cost and reservation multiplier is on level 20 Blood Magic at the moment, but 24% increased aura effect is really strong. Obviously, aura effect's one of the most brokenly powerful stats in the game, so Arrogance is looking like it's going to be really good. Val Earthquake, won't go into this in any depth, except that it's just better than it was. Val Ground Slam, oh my god, this looks amazing. So this is gaining the ability to be exerted as though it was not a Val skill. It's getting buffed in every possible way. Val Ground Slam, I'm thinking of putting together some sort of champion build around Val Ground Slam that will potentially at least experiment with the unique helmet, with the unique amulet Zerfi's Heart, which I think has a lot of synergy with Val Ground Slam. I've played with them both before, back when they were nowhere near as good as they are now, and I think there's a lot of synergy there. So keep your eye on Val Ground Slam. I think it will be really good. Val Blade Vortex, Blade Vortex, the base skill has been dumpstered. I don't think that any changes to the Val version, which are a mixture of buffs and nerfs, make up for it. I think Blade Vortex has gone from top tier meta skill to maybe in the dumpster, maybe middle tier. We're not sure on that, but Val Blade Vortex doesn't pull it out of that tier. Val Burning Arrow getting buffed. Val Cyclone got buffed and no one will care because it's so mechanically bad that no one will want to use it. Val Lightning Strike I've never really used, so I'm not really capable of giving useful commentary on it. Val Rain of Arrows, buffed in every way, and it was already pretty good. I think from memory, one of the alternate qualities on this is really good too, so that's something that will need to be thought about. Val Reeve, this is one of those skills that just doesn't quite get there. Val Reeve has gotten better. Val Reeve actually makes your normal Reeve better, which is a really interesting interaction, but ultimately it just doesn't have enough AoE for the modern version of the game. Val Spectral Throw is getting buffed in every possible way and might actually be quite good now, but we'll have to see it. That said, Spectral Throw just doesn't do enough damage. Val Arc, very slight buffs on a skill that was already good. Val Blight, the smallest buff of all on a skill that was already very good. Val Cold Snap, getting quite a lot better. It's getting more focus on the initial hit, which is interesting. It's something that people don't usually think to scale on it. Fair warning, Val Cold Snap will kill you in Elemental Reflect maps now. It used to be that you could safely use Cold Snap and Val Cold Snap in Elemental Reflect maps if you're careful not to hit large packs with the initial burst of damage. You can no longer do that. Val Fireball, basically no changes. It was always very good. It still is. Val Flame Blast, need to play around with this to be sure, but I think it might be quite good now. That said, the problem with Val Flame Blast is you're playing Flame Blast. Val Ice Nova was already very good and is just nuts now, especially in conjunction with killing legions. If you are wanting to make a build to slaughter legions, then Val Ice Nova is something you just can't go past. It is so good at that. It's also really good in dense maps. Val Lightning Trap has been good in the past, but I've never really used it. I believe it's good now, but it's got a lot of extra damage. Val Power Siphon, oh, this is nuts. This has really gotten a lot better, and it was already pretty good, so definitely keep this in mind. This is not a return to the pre-nerf glory days of Val Power Siphon, which I think might have been Harbinger League, when it was hitting enemies a screen and a half away. It's no longer doing that. It still has its range. I think its range cap is 75, but it hits a lot of enemies on your current screen, and it just does so much damage now. Val Righteous Fire is either being nerfed or dumpstered, and it will be a question of finding out which one that is through gameplay. I think it may have been dumpstered, but I'm not really that mad about that. Val Righteous Fire was so good that spellcasters kind of felt they had to use it. There's a bunch of other options that you can use for Val skills now, that are some of which will be on par with what Val Righteous Fire used to offer, but they'll offer it in different ways for each spellcaster. Val Spark, basically no change. Stormcall got better, not really sure. Like Val Stormcall, I don't think it really needed the buff. I think it was already pretty good. And then we've got just the normal skill gems, which the biggest change is that Punishment appears to have taken a nerf, but it is actually better than it used to be. As a whole balance of the changes, the changes to low life made punishment quite a lot better. Punishment is something you want to seriously consider using now, whereas in the past you haven't used it on pretty much anything. And yeah, Blade Blast has been nerfed, but not very hard. Blade Vortex has been dumpstered. Toxic Rain, it's not clear yet whether it's dumpstered or whether it's been hurt. That'll have to be tested out. I'm not going to do that testing. But if you did want to play Toxic Rain, be willing to respec to Caustic Arrow. I don't know what's happened here with Brand Recall's just been set up so that it works with the life effects. And then there's a couple of things that have nerfed some of the easiest to get sources of exposure. And Divergent Berserk has been nerfed pretty hard. There's a couple of changes to the various mine supports that have been mostly done to deal with the explosively powerful interaction with Indigon. Anyways, that's the new skill gems. I wanted to try and get that into a much shorter form than the patch notes video last night, especially given that we've got Exsanguinate and Reap stats now. I think there's a lot of potential here. And as I said, I will be putting together something around Reap tonight, I believe. So that's my time. So time of this video going uploaded plus maybe 12 to 14 hours. Otherwise, have a good one, and I'll see you there.